Welcome to the FastFoodLegend podcast. My name is Sam, and every week I will be sharing with you my latest essays about fast food. There is a brief silence between each essay. If you like my podcast, please subscribe, like, and most importantly, share it with someone else you think would like it. Thank you for your continued support of my work. Here is today's episode. Beneath the soft glow of a pendant lamp shaped like a retrofitted milk glass bell, this in-and-out dining quadrant performs a precise fantasy of Californian nostalgia. The red and white palette is more than color scheme. It is ideological costume, the dress code of institutional memory. Each bolted-down chair curves in rigid hospitality, its back resembling a simplified sun, a motif of perpetual daytime. The space is small, but it hums with scripted cleanliness. The walls are papered with a pattern of miniature palms, reduced to a repeating iconographic whisper. They act not as decoration, but as indexical reassurance, a low-stakes mise-en-scène of desert Eden. Above the window, however, the palms reappear in negative, reversed and scaled up in deep pink silhouette against the awning's white vinyl. This ghosting of the wall motif introduces a quiet doubling, as though the brand's own memory has been flipped and exported to its edge. It is an architectural echo, a brand dreaming itself. Beneath the wallpaper, a band of gray-painted wood paneling wraps the room like a utilitarian wainscot. It divides memory from maintenance, nostalgia from mop water. The paneling's vertical slats read as faux functional, evoking domestic architecture, while betraying the modular logic of commercial space. It mediates between the sentimental print world above and the harder geometries below. The floor tiles are pure grid, charcoal and slate alternating in 12-inch rigor. Their matte surface absorbs light, refusing to shimmer, absorbing every step like a chalkboard accepts gesture. They anchor the room's floating gestures in a strict orthographic field. But this control is not total. 3 discarded French fries lie just off the seam. They are absurd, inevitable, tragic. They rupture the image, not with chaos, but with residue. They are the room's only improvisation, a mistake that feels choreographed. The tables float but are fixed. They share a single support, a Y-shaped base that branches upward to hold 2 tops and downward to cradle 4 seats. It is an efficient, brutal solution, a choreography of compromise, masquerading as furniture. Its symmetry is not pleasing, but enforced. The base asserts that this is one object, not 4. One conversation, not many. Lighting is doubled. A pendant fixture descends theatrically in red and white, but overhead, a recessed ceiling light repeats its function with silent redundancy. One light is styled, the other structural. They echo each other in tone and temperature, but not in temperament. The pendant wants to be seen. The ceiling light wants to be forgotten. Together they form a hierarchy of illumination, one symbolic, one instrumental. The serigraph on the wall by Michael Bryan is not merely artwork. It is a liturgical object. Executed in the richly layered technique of screen printing, Bryan's image bathes a mid-century in and out in high-saturation nostalgia. The cars gleam like showroom ghosts. A couple at the walk-up window seems caught not in conversation, but in tableau. The sheen on the roof, the scripted palm trees, the reflected neon, all of it suspends time, producing a glossed memory of something that never quite existed, but insists on being remembered. Bryan's print does not simulate memory, it performs it. His serigraphic texture lends the image a synthetic vividness, more intense than recollection, more orderly than documentary. The composition might initially suggest the pictorial language of realism, but its real allegiance is to corporate mythology. It enacts a carefully tuned Americana, restless cars, endless palm trees, permanent golden hour. In this way, it recalls the strategies of Bagus Pandega, not in medium, but in function, an image networked into the ambient logic of brand, where history is rendered modular and effective. Across from this manufactured eternity, a man is visible through the window. He sits in still profile, elbows on the sill, caught between reflection and prayer. The thank you sign behind him stares blankly back. His presence, incidental but potent, enacts a Richard Foreman-like insertion of the human as disruption, a figure half seen, half absorbed into the diner's ritualized grid. The tables, cantilevered and antiseptic, hover like unraised altars. Their geometry offers no softness, no negotiation. The tiled floor completes the arrangement, its perfect squares, suggesting both sanitation and surveillance. This is a temple of repetition, built not to surprise, but to soothe. Here, fast food is not about speed. It is about recursion, about fidelity to a fantasy rendered permanent through serigraphy and seating charts. It is not a place to eat, but a place to remember, or more accurately, to be remembered for. A site where time is printed flat, color-calibrated, and permanently backlit. A shrine to sun-bleached longing, made manifest through plastic, print, and routine. The McDonald's Creamy Chili McCrispy Strip Dip occupies a distinct and strategic place within the brand's condiment taxonomy. While items like tangy barbecue, spicy buffalo, and honey mustard are listed as sauces, this particular product is labeled not as a sauce, but as a strip dip. This may seem like a minor lexical divergence, but it opens up an entire avenue of semiotic inquiry. Unlike the generalized modular language of sauce, which implies versatility and multi-purpose use, the term strip dip is aggressively specific. It prescribes its own application, attaches itself explicitly to a product, the McCrispy strip, and in doing so, claims its own kind of proprietary intimacy. It is not just a condiment, it is a ritual object. The words isolate the act of dipping as a self-contained gesture of fidelity, an act of devotion within the altar space of the disposable. In the hand, the strip dip container feels like a reliquary of flavor. It is sealed, glistening, and shaped almost like a Roman wax tablet. Its color, a muted apricot orange flecked with fried chicken breading iconography, conjures the burnished flesh tones of Venetian Renaissance painting. This is not hyperbole. The soy oil sheen, refracting overhead light, resembles the soft sfumato of a Titian cheek or the gold-glazed highlights in a Parmigianino drapery fold. This strip dip carries within its palate the visual memory of devotional figuration, not of saints, but of chicken. From a compositional standpoint, the ingredients list performs a kind of miniature drama. At the top, soybean oil, distilled vinegar, red jalapeno pepper puree. These are a trio of industrial softeners that smooth the base into a creamy blankness. But soon after, more insistent agents begin to surface: acetic acid, soy sauce, vinegar, and a litany of minor chemical stabilizers: xanthan gum, potassium sorbate, oleoresin, paprika. The result is a densely emulsified performance of heat, sweetness, and suspension. It does not mix, it holds. Just like a narrative tableau frozen in oil paint, the chili particles are suspended in eternal visual pause. What is perhaps most affecting is the visual dissonance between the packaging and the McDonald's core palette. The creamy chili dip does not fit the ketchup reds and mustard yellows of the brand's legacy. Its earthy hue stands apart. It is more muted, less neon. This divergence is precisely the point. This is a dip that gestures toward craft, or at least the illusion of it. In a landscape of sauces mass poured into translucent ramekins, this is the lone object preassigned to a specific form: the strip, a dip with a partner, a dip with destiny. In art historical terms, this product operates in the same register as package-based reliquaries of the Gothic period, or tabernacles designed to hold only a single, consecrated object. It shares its spatial logic with Fra Angelico's Annunciation at San Marco, where sacred encounter is framed within a precise architectural threshold. It echoes the hush of Rogier van der Weeden's The Descent from the Cross, where every figure conforms to the rectangle, every gesture contained and suspended, and it mirrors the quiet, luminous containment of Piero della Francesca's Madonna del Parto, where divine potential is enclosed within an unassuming surface. The strip dip asks to be opened with deliberation, and once opened, it does not spread or drizzle. It receives, it binds, it adheres. If sauces are generic, this is revelatory. Today, we will be examining 4 window bays on the exterior of a suburban Taco Bell. This uncredited exhibition announces the return of chicken nuggets to the menu with the conceptual clarity of a minimalist text piece and the visual aggression of a retail pop-up. The posters do not function as conventional advertising. They do not offer price, nutritional value, or persuasive narrative. Instead, they present a recursive meditation on language, repetition, and the architecture of corporate memory. Framed by the building's glass and viewed from the parking lot's theater of idling engines, the works transform a fast food facade into a site of ambient declaration. This is not an introduction of a product. It is a staging of its inevitability. The first poster we will look at is titled, "Your Taco Place That's Also a Chicken Place That's Also a Taco Place." This work opens the exhibition with a gesture of linguistic vertigo. The text circles itself with mechanical conviction. What begins as a declaration of identity dissolves into tautological static. A taco enclave becomes a chicken nugget edifice, becomes a taco enclave again. In this feedback loop, naming is no longer about category, but about volume. The repetition functions like the linguistic abstraction found in the work of Kei Umezu, who renders technological contradiction not as breakdown, but as atmosphere. This poster floats its breaded subjects across a violet void, presenting protein not as food, but as token, meaning accrues only through iteration. The viewer is not asked to read, but to orbit. And yet 2 of the nuggets break the spell. One has a bite taken from its edge, exposing its interior, soft, pale, disrupted, against the burnished armor of its crust. Another is simply torn open, as if split during handling or collapsed under its own light infrastructure. These breaches introduce a trace of action within an otherwise sealed system, small ruptures in the visual grammar of abundance. The image suggests completion, but is laced with evidence of contact. One has been consumed. Another has come undone. Neither is whole. Below the frame, just outside the compositional field, but visible on the window ledge, lies a flat, emptied, hot sauce packet. Its shape is undistorted, its foil unwrinkled. It does not appear tossed or forgotten. It has settled. Quietly parallel to the image above, it becomes a kind of punctuation, an object with no claim to be looked at, now forced into legibility. The poster trades in closed loops and branded recursion. The packet offers no such structure. It is incidental but final, the only element in the scene that does not pretend to be intact. Next, let's take a look at crispy chicken nuggets. They're back. This piece asserts itself with declarative symmetry. A carton of nuggets stands centered, upright, nested between branding and warmth. The headline arches overhead, purple and weightless. Beneath it, 3 nuggets form a casual arrangement, each carefully styled for texture and volume. The phrase, "they're back," sits in parentheses, as if to qualify its own enthusiasm. Behind the foreground's calm, an overlooked drama unfolds. On the tabletop, to the upper right of the nuggets, an open jalapeno honey mustard sauce container leans toward the scene. Its surface is glossy, golden, unmolested. A sealed packet of the same sauce rests directly beside it, pristine and upright, as if to remind us of what this image might have looked like before intervention. The pairing introduces a narrative. The open sauce is aftermath. The sealed one is protocol. There is no visible foil peel, no dripping gesture, no hand. But the open packet implies presence. Something has happened. A gesture has occurred off frame. This quiet rupture splits the image. The 3 nuggets, casually staged, exist as display. The sauce, by contrast, has been entered, activated. Its mustard yellow color cuts through the beige and brown palette of the open box, the only note of acidity in a composition dominated by warmth and starch. That sharpness functions as a kind of formal resistance. The open sauce refuses the total polish of the image. It points toward a time beyond the frame, the moment just before eating. The sealed packet next to it, by contrast, performs control. It is the image's last attempt at containment. The work is careful, but not closed. Its title speaks in absolutes. Its image does not. The sauce introduces doubt, or at least a question. What kind of return is this exactly? What are we being given back? What appears simple is made strange by the evidence of touch. Something has been broken open, and the image has chosen not to hide it. Moving on, the third piece is titled simply, They're Back. Stripped of context and specificity, this work distills the logic of announcement to its most hollow core. The subject is effaced. They becomes a stand-in for any product capable of return, but the image restores what the text withholds. At the top right, a chicken nugget hovers, poised mid-dip above a plastic sauce container. From its battered edge, a single amber droplet stretches toward the pool below, captured in mid-fall. This suspended moment is the only gesture in the composition, a micro-theater of viscosity. It suggests motion, impact, gravity, time. Below it, a container labeled simply Bell Sauce. The name is telling in its lack of invention. Like Cane's sauce, or Zaxby sauce, or KFC sauce, it participates in a genre of branded generics, nondescriptors that treat the restaurant's name as sufficient content. Each sauce mimics a slightly sweetened peppery mayo base, each the echo of an echo. What we're offered is not a flavor, but a signifier of adjacency. The sauce exists not to distinguish, but to conform. The poster, then, is not about the nugget, or even the act of dipping. It is about being the kind of place that would have a sauce like this. What is being reinstated is not the food, but the position in a semiotic marketplace where similarity is value. The sauce doesn't clarify, it confirms. This act of reference without differentiation mirrors what Ivy G. Wilson describes in his writing on sonic sonography, where ambient soundscapes produce presence without message. In this image, flavor is simulated through color, naming through shape. Everything is representational, nothing is specific. The drop of sauce becomes the clearest point in the whole show, a moment of suspended meaning, about to fall, never landing. Also of note, this is the only poster in the series that does not have a separate Taco Bell logo in its own window. And finally, let's have a look at Crispy, 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 Crispy. The final work is pure incantation. 4 identical words stacked in a vertical chant, each flattening the one before it. This is surface-turned mantra. It is less about communication than compulsion. At first glance, repetition appears absolute, but a closer reading reveals that each instance is marked by difference. A nugget interrupts every line, but never in the same place. The first sits just under RIS, the second under the C, the third breaks beneath SP, and the fourth interrupts the I. The pattern is consistent only in its deviation. What looks like uniformity is revealed as structure with inflection. The word crispy doesn't repeat, it stutters. The image choreographs attention, using slight misalignments to prevent the eye from settling. The work invokes the textual density of Mel Bachner without Bachner's tension. There is no escalation, no irony, just iteration bent by interference. Like the serial enumerations of Francesca Dubrock's curatorial grids, this poster accumulates force not by denying differentiation, but by hiding it in plain sight. Crispiness becomes not a quality, but a system of interruption. In the bottom right corner, the Taco Bell logo sits partially on the final Y, its lavender circle nesting into the geometry like a closing parenthesis. It does not disrupt. It cohabits. Not a mark of authorship, but a form of soft possession. The mantra finishes not with punctuation, but with signature, not a period, a seal. Taken together, the four posters form a closed circuit of corporate language and image, where meaning is generated not through persuasion, but through repetition, interruption, and return. Each work stages its own minor breakdown, whether through recursive slogans, pre-bitten products, open sources, or disrupted typography, but none of these ruptures escape the system that contains them. What emerges is a portrait of branding in its late phase, where declaration replaces development and gestures toward identity serve primarily to loop the viewer back into the logic of the menu. In the end, everything points back to tacos, even when it doesn't. Here, we examine an object that sits at the intersection of pervasive branding and ephemeral cultural touchstones, the Slurpee branded portable speaker. Rendered in the familiar vertical stripes of its namesake frozen beverage container, crimson, white, and a translucent vessel, it immediately signifies a specific site of consumption. Yet its function as an audio output device proposes a curious conceptual merger, sound emanating from the shell of a liquid confection. This conflation of the auditory and the ingestible, the temporary vessel and the repeatable technology, is a peculiar gesture, one that challenges the conventional understanding of object utility. The very notion of transmitting audio from a beverage cup replica suggests a desire to imbue a transient experience with a form of permanence, however limited. The object is not merely a speaker, it is a mnemonic device, a physical echo of a sugary moment. This deliberate confounding of form and function moves beyond simple novelty. It engages in a subtle redefinition of how we interact with both commodities and media. It asks us to consider the sonic qualities of taste, or perhaps the flavorful potential of sound, however absurd the pairing initially appears. Further shaping the user experience is the prescribed content. Promotional materials explicitly link this object to a curated playlist of over 40 songs by the collaborating musical group. This is not a neutral device capable of broadcasting any sound the user might choose, but a conduit tied to a specific auditory identity. The suggestion to purchase 2 units to achieve stereo sound reinforces this directed engagement, encouraging a synchronized, amplified performance of brand loyalty and a specific, imposed listening environment. It transforms individual objects into components of a larger, choreographed consumption ritual, where the audience is guided not just in what to buy, but in how to listen and how to arrange their interaction with the branded artifact. This collaboration also prompts reflection on the trajectory of cultural movements and their eventual entanglement with commercial forces. A musical entity historically aligned with the punk ethos, a movement often characterized by its rejection of mainstream commercialism and its embrace of raw, temporary energy, participates in the creation of a mass-produced, inherently disposable object. The Slurpee speaker, destined for obsolescence as its internal battery degrades and its plastic shell endures in landfill, stands as a stark material contrast to the ephemeral yet potent anti-materialist gestures often associated with early punk. The financial transaction required for its acquisition underscores the complex path from cultural expression to commercial product, where rebellious energy is channeled into manufactured goods purchased by the very audience it once perhaps sought to provoke. This tension between historical gesture and present reality, between purported anti-establishment stance and market engagement, is a central paradox embodied by this object. One might find a parallel in the work of Martha Jungwirth. Her abstract paintings, with their raw brushstrokes and dynamic interplay of color and line, often convey a sense of intense energy and internal conflict. While operating in a purely visual realm, Jungwirth's ability to translate complex emotional or physical states into vibrant, sometimes discordant forms resonates with the conceptual dissonance of the Slurpee speaker. Here, a potent cultural history is molded into a constrained, commercially defined object, creating a friction not unlike the visual tensions present in Jungwirth's work, albeit through vastly different means. The Slurpee speaker, then, is more than just a promotional item. It is an artifact of layered contradictions, a bright plastic node in the complex network of contemporary culture, brand, and disposability. Suspended from steel cables like a relic of techno-agrarian futurism, the oversized KFC bucket at the room's center functions less as a light fixture than as an emblematic beacon. Its cylindrical silhouette, red stripes slick as enamel, hovers within a concentric ring inscribed with marketing scripture, a slow spiral of consumer catechism. The result recalls the dramaturgical staging of Anne Imhoff, where ritualized space, layered with corporate semiotics, becomes site for a suspended choreography of waiting, observing, devouring. Below, the circular table bleeds a branded red, its vinyl skin imitating both a picnic cloth and an emergency beacon. Chairs encircle it in disciplined formation, suggesting a scene poised between family communion and public ritual. The room's axial clarity, with its forced symmetries and scripted nostalgia, channels Michael Asher's interrogations of institutional framing, though here the frame is not the gallery wall, but the perimeter of the round table, the halo of the chandelier, the line where laminate flooring meets the red medium-density fiberboard wall panel. That panel serves as both backdrop and billboard. It stages Colonel Sanders as patriarch and patron saint. His grin is unyielding, his gaze diffused through layers of photographic patina. Around him, smaller frames assemble a fragmentary mythology of the brand. These images function as reliquaries, less historical than performative, their arrangement more akin to Richard Foreman's scenographic density than any traditional memorial logic. Each photograph is part of a motif in a corporate liturgy. Painted across this mise-en-scène in block white capitals is the phrase, "the original celebrity chef," a phrase that folds in on itself with self-aware absurdity. The title bestows upon the Colonel a strange dual sanctity, part culinary innovator, part proto-influencer. The language operates like a time capsule of mediated fame, predating TikTok virality, but already rehearsing it. The phrase functions as both epitaph and forecast, sealing the chef's image in the language of prepackaged myth while foreshadowing the algorithmic personalities to come. To the right, a blue-toned poster hangs with bureaucratic indifference. It explains pressure frying like a declassified manual. The aluminum cooker, rendered diagrammatic, floats against its pastel field as if plucked from a Cold War food lab. The clinical affect of this poster echoes the tactics of Bagus Pandega, whose assemblages recontextualize functional design into effective systems. Here, too, the object's utilitarian core becomes abstracted, reduced to its ghost image. The floor, planked in faux wood, evokes a cleanliness that resists intimacy. Every material choice here hums with contradiction. Warmth made sterile, nostalgia made modular, history rendered as content. This is not simply a place to eat, it is a parable in prefab, a looped mise-en-scène in which consumption becomes choreography, and every detail rehearses a faith in the immaculate fiction of fast food's origin myth. What is most striking about the facade is its effort to erase itself. Sand-colored stucco and beige-brown panels suppress ornament. The building doesn't assert presence, it recedes into corporate anonymity. This is not absence, but a program blandness, the architecture of acquiescence. The golden arch, a flattened M, disarticulated from any material it might once have claimed, is suspended against a wood-like veneer. It is too smooth to be wood, too matte to be metal. The material simulates warmth while remaining tactically non-specific. Like Mel Bachner's late language paintings, All or Nothing, which mine semantic systems for their coercive structure, this McDonald's peels language from function. Welcome hovers in clear block letters above the door, centered, non-committal, neither inviting nor ironic. The command is issued without authorship. potted plants are hung at even intervals across the right facade, spatial punctuation. Their placement is not organic but algorithmic, echoing the pseudo-naturalism of Bagas Pandega and K. Imazu's Artificial Green by Nature Green 4.0. These plants, too, are aesthetic prostheses, real, perhaps, but unreal in function. They offer no shade, no softness. Their purpose is visual rhythm. To the left, a cluster of promotional posters renders food as graphic excess. Burgers stack themselves beyond reason, saturated and symmetrical. This is not nourishment, it's digital fantasy rendered on vinyl. The Hershey's milkshake ad, centered like a devotional icon, might as well be a Calebot interior, retranslated into fast food allegory. Not a window into domestic reverie, but into processed spectacle. The accessibility signage and parking zones are crisply painted, edged in regulation blue. Geometry dominates. Ramps, arrows, diagonal hashes. It is a choreography of compliance. Every gesture is codified, every body anticipated. Even the awnings play it safe. Yellow blades project from the structure at obtuse angles, not to shade, but to signal brand continuity. They appear as echoes of motion, like afterimages from a performance. One might recall Anne Imhoff's Doom, House of Hope, except here the house is hope-proofed. It has no glass, no vulnerability. Only the performance remains, continuous, invisible, transactional. In total, a building that behaves like a sign that pretends to be a building. Architecture as interface, surface as system. Not dystopia, something flatter. A landscape where critique feels decorative. This unassuming image, seemingly a casual snapshot of a convenience store display, opens a surprisingly rich vein of inquiry, echoing the conceptual strategies of artists who interrogate the everyday. The central text, "Did you know you can get 2 donuts with a hole in the middle and a cup of coffee and save?" functions as a found poem, its vernacular directness reminiscent of the often provocative, system-interrogating, and culturally embedded strategies of the architectural firm OMA. One might initially struggle to bridge the gap between a utilitarian donut offer and OMA's portfolio of large-scale cultural and corporate edifices. However, OMA's deep engagement with the mechanics of globalization, the architecture of information, and the very fabric of contemporary urban life provides fertile ground for such a comparison. Consider the firm's research and design for the Strelka Institute for Media, Architecture, and Design in Moscow, 2010, which involved creating an educational program. Like the donut sign, Strelka's program introduction, as depicted in visuals from the period, utilized bold textual declarations to convey its mission, aiming to instruct and orient its audience within a new conceptual framework. The donut sign, in its cerulean blue, jagged speech bubble, similarly offers a direct, almost pedagogical proposition to the consumer, a defined pathway to a minor economic advantage. It is a micro-instruction embedded in the flow of daily commerce, just as OMA often embeds complex ideas within the functional programs of its buildings. The playful, almost redundant insistence in the sign's text, 2 donuts with a hole in the middle, touches upon a subtle absurdity that finds echoes in OMA's more audacious early proposals. Projects like the speculative hyperbuilding for 120,000 people in Bangkok, 1996, or the master plan for the disputed Spratly Islands, 2006, were designed to provoke and to question normative assumptions about urbanism and territory. While the donut sign's linguistic quirk is a far cry from these grand architectural provocations, it nonetheless represents a tiny hiccup in the expected efficiency of commercial messaging, a slight overdetermination that an architect from OMA, a firm known for its intellectual wit, might dissect with interest. Furthermore, OMA's design for the CCTV headquarters in Beijing, 2012, a structure that is itself a continuous loop for the production and dissemination of media, offers another point of conceptual contact. The CCTV building is an engine for broadcasting national narratives and official information. The humble donut sign, in its brightly lit display case, also broadcasts a message and offer a small piece of commercial content designed to capture attention and drive a transaction. Both are, in their vastly different scales and contexts, nodes of communication. OMA's decision to pursue the CCTV project was described as a historic choice, reflecting an engagement with emergent global power structures. The convenience store sign, a ubiquitous feature of globalized retail, is a tiny particle within those same structures. OMA's research arm, AMO, famously explored concepts like junk space in the book Content, 2004, theorizing the often undifferentiated, aesthetically compromised, yet entirely functional spaces of modern commercial life. The setting of the donut sign, the generic, brightly lit interior of a convenience store, with its standardized fittings and displays, is a quintessential example of this junk space. While OMA designs iconic buildings, their work is often a critical response to, or a strategic intervention within, such pervasive environments. Even OMA's engagement with massive, ambitious projects in regions undergoing what Renier de Graaf terms unfettered modernization, such as Zardoun by Neom in Saudi Arabia, reflects a grappling with the aesthetics and infrastructures of rapid, often standardized development. The donut sign and its surrounding commercial paraphernalia is a product of a similar, albeit more mundane, form of relentless commercial expansion and standardization. Its visual language, designed for instant legibility and appeal, is part of the lingua franca of this globalized landscape that OMA both shapes and critiques. What do you celebrate when you celebrate Pac-Man? You don't celebrate character. You don't celebrate voice or interiority or even growth. You celebrate a loop, a relentless, iconic, directionless chase. You celebrate addiction. Krispy Kreme's 2025 collaboration with Bandai Namco, marking the 45th anniversary of the Yellow Orb's arcade birth, is many things: marketing stunt, nostalgia play, branded indulgence. But most of all, it is an accidental masterpiece of allegorical realism. In this collection of meticulously styled donuts, each iced and sugared into glyphs of the Pac-Man universe, we are presented not with celebration, but with diagnosis. The culture eats what it is. Pac-Man, famously, has no face, just a mouth. He is appetite personified, an ever-chomping void with no voice, no past, no arc. His only function is to consume, to flee ghosts, to turn and chase them once empowered. The ghosts, colorful, persistent, barely differentiated echoes of a past he both fears and attacks when high on power pellets. It is not a story. It is a behavioral loop. Pac-Man is not a hero. He is a metaphor for the addict, locked in a cycle of fleeing and confronting his own history again and again until game over. To then honor him in sugar is poetic. This collection is not simply dessert, it is a medium of critique. The donuts are themselves avatars of craving. The Pac-Man Party Donut, with its yellow buttercream trail, an edible icon of the character, replicates the shape of his mouth mid-chomp. The Team Ghost Donut, filled with chocolate, literally conceals trauma beneath a slick, black maze of icing. The Strawberry Power Berry is as literal a power-up metaphor as one could eat, a red-glazed rush disguised as fruit. The palette is joyfully cartoonish. The effect is quietly devastating. These donuts are designed to be consumed by a public already addicted to sugar, screens, and celebrity archetypes. That they depict Pac-Man, himself famous but unknowable, universal but hollow, only reinforces the structural hollowness of the present moment. We eat the icon to become the icon, or at least to chase or escape our own ghost through his edible performance. It's as though Mike Kelly's dismembered childhood figures were reassembled, glazed, and sold back to us in boxes of 12. And then there is the medium, video games. now indistinguishable from the digital platforms on which this collaboration will be shared. The Krispy Kreme's Pac-Man collection is not a real-world event so much as a social media interface, a campaign born to live in the algorithmic arcade of Instagram and TikTok. Like Pac-Man, we too are players inside the maze, chasing pellets of engagement, dodging the haunted trails of our past selves, and occasionally turning the tables with a sponsored sugar high. The donut becomes both prop and prophecy. Even the marketing campaign, encouraging customers to chomp 45,000 free original glazed R and offering 25-cent dozens to mark the occasion, reads as more than celebration. It reads as bait, a mass reenactment of the game's core mechanic. We move toward reward. We eat. We repeat. This is not just a food tie-in, it is a meditation on the simulation of identity. Pac-Man, like many of our most powerful public figures, politicians, influencers, CEOs, has no inner life. He has only visibility, motion, and brand power. He is a cult of personality without personality, worshipped and consumed not despite his hollowness, but because of it. There is a latent mysticism in the Popeyes pickle glaze sandwich poster that belies its commercial intentions. At first glance, this limited time offering adheres to the standard conventions of fast food photography. Crisp detail, impossibly plump bread, high saturation palettes designed to beckon from a distance. But pause. Truly pause before this image, and you will notice that it operates not unlike the esoteric paintings of Hilma F. Klint. F. Klint, whose spiritual abstractions preceded and arguably anticipated much of early 20th century modernism, understood the visual register of revelation. Her work was not merely symbolic, but diagrammatic. Portals, mandalas, and spirals transmitted meaning rather than simply representing it. Likewise, this sandwich is not merely advertised. It is diagrammed. It is indexed. It is staged not in photographic realism, but in planar abstraction, a glazed totem of orange-red protein centered on a turquoise plate, resting on a field of spectral chartreuse. Color here is not decorative, it is performative. The background green buzzes like a clairvoyant frequency. The blue plate acts as a chromatic halo. The sandwich itself becomes a layered trace of brioche, poultry, pickle, a vernacular cosmogram of American indulgence. In this light, it echoes a Klint's Group 4, the 10 largest series, particularly number 7, Adulthood, in which petal-like forms and cyclical motifs embody metaphysical growth. Both compositions wield vibrancy, not for clarity, but for transmission. They do not describe, they assert. Note the pickle, sliced and splayed beside the sandwich on a cutting board, paired with sprigs of dill. This echoing motif creates an involuted symmetry. Pickles on board, pickles in sandwich. A spiral logic emerges. In A.F. Klint's spiritual lexicon, the spiral was a cipher of consciousness, of growth, of life expanding through time. Here the spiral is literalized not in shape, but in recurrence. Pickles reappear, flavor is echoed. Desire returns, refracted. Even the typographic treatment speaks in an A.F. Klint idiom. Pickle glaze sandwich is rendered in rotund, playful type, not unlike the hand-scripted text of Klint often used to annotate her paintings. The words float above the image, less label than incantation. Limited time is scrawled like a ritual caveat. There is urgency, yes, but also ephemerality, a fleeting contact with a more saturated plane of consumption. To read this image merely as marketing is to miss its fuller visual function. It is a devotional panel for the contemporary appetite. It does not promote the sandwich, it channels it. In this register, Popeyes ceases to be a purveyor of poultry and becomes instead a medium, a vessel through which desire becomes form, color becomes message, and indulgence becomes experience. Rain-slicked and framed by manicured roses, the sign hums with quiet desperation. not because of what it says, but how it says it. Plastic letters, hand set into grooves, struggle to assert clarity in a collapsing syntax. There's no punctuation, no price, no context. Just the urgency of now, like an overheard directive in a dream. This small gesture, a roadside marquee hawking fried dough, could be mistaken for ephemera, but as with much in the post-conceptual moment, its refusal to explain becomes its power. One thinks of Charisse Perlina Weston, whose recent interventions into text and glass similarly mine the instability of language as structure. Here, instead of shattered panels or cut vinyl, we find modular plastic, constrained by architecture and seasonal menu rotation. The letters don't scream, they wait passively for replacement. The font, blocky, neutral, likely a Franklin Gothic variant, feels institutional, almost ecclesiastical in its simplicity. It recalls Deborah Luster's quiet typographic elegies, where legibility is treated not as clarity, but as constraint. In both cases, the form betrays the content. Luster's meditations on violence and loss versus Roy's fried hush puppies, sizzling into metaphor. Hush, puppies. The phrase itself is a kind of violence disguised as comfort. Hush, like a scold. Puppies, like an apology. It echoes the thematic friction present in Jacqueline Wright's photographic constructions, which compress domesticity and surveillance into a single dissonant frame. What is this food offering, if not a kind of edible pacification? A hush spoken in Greece. To try them now is not merely a call to action. It's a narrowing of possible futures. No tomorrow, no later, no reflection. The imperative displaces desire with obedience. As with Paul Anthony Smith's portraiture interventions, where surface becomes screen, where identity is masked through gesture, this sign camouflages itself in plain sight. You see it, you act, you forget. The physical sign, with its faux Western arch and corporate warmth, seems designed to blend into background noise. But like Carlos Vega's layered surfaces, it becomes a palimpsest, promotional language overwriting itself season after season. The ghosts of roast beefs and coleslaws past linger under each replaced tile. The message is always new, the structure never changes. This is not sculpture, it is not painting, it is not installation. And yet it performs all three. It occupies land, commands space, and directs the viewer's gaze. It holds the air like an open-ended sentence. And in its insistence on now, it joins a lineage of work that recognizes how temporality and the illusion of urgency has become the dominant syntax of capital. In this way, the Roy Rogers sign participates in the broader curatorial atmosphere captured in Francesca Dubrock's remarks on regionally attuned practice. The idea that even the most local interventions can vibrate globally if the frequency is tuned right. Which is to say, the hush puppies don't matter, the now does. The sign begins with a pronoun and a verb, no punctuation, just an address and an action. You rule. What reads at first as affirmation flickers toward imperative. This Burger King marquee installs language with the structure of a slogan and the tone of an empty blessing. There is no subject other than you and no object other than rule. This is command as complement and complement as command. Beneath this linguistic baton toss, the secondary line speaks in product. Steakhouse Bacon Whopper. Here is the invocation of meat in compound form. It gestures toward luxury with steakhouse. It anchors the excess in bacon. It delivers the brand's mythos in Whopper. This is not a meal, it is a proper noun, a kind of edible sigil. Seen at night, the whole construction feels liturgical. The white glow of the marquee reads like a backlit votive. The entire structure functions as a shrine to self-determination, albeit filtered through corporate vernacular. The vertical rhythm of the text is accidental poetry. You, rule, steakhouse, bacon whopper. This recursive absurdity finds kinship in the sculptural logic of Sacha Gordon's staged environments. Gordon's work populates sterile interiors with intense emotional charge. Likewise, the illuminated sign reads as emotionally neutral but semantically unstable. It means too little and too much. It is a menu and a mantra. From a distance, the form of the sign takes on a totemic quality. It stands solitary, symmetrical, typographic. Its voice does not echo, it hovers. A statement for no one that addresses everyone. In the end, we are left with 4 lines. They offer food and recognition. They promise flavor and authority. They are stacked like a sandwich. They are meant to be consumed. The Arby's window display introducing steak nuggets operates as both photographic assertion and corporeal comedy. These are not nuggets, as the word might traditionally suggest. They are not golden, nor spherical, nor dippable in the colloquial sense. They are charred, cuboid, and grotesquely marbled. They appear both cooked and geologic. They stack not like food, but like ballast. They are meat-rendered tectonic. The typography is stark, magenta on white. The imperative introducing recalls the tone of a blockbuster trailer or a sideshow banner. It is urgent. It is declarative. It assumes desire. Steak nuggets in 2 blunt words renders the term nugget newly absurd. There is no nuggetness here. This is beef in the shape of confrontation. The visual language of the image, a flattened white void, the shadowless composition, the oversaturation of muscle and char, evokes the high-contrast still lifes of Candace Williams' editorial projects. Williams' chromatic confrontations with the body politic find a certain echo here, where meat is shorn of context, but loaded with insinuation. There is no plate, no sauce, no garnish, just a stack of dead cow. Architecturally, the image violates expected scales. The meat towers are almost figural. They rise as if animated. The largest stack reaches above the horizon line of the viewer, like a little Stonehenge of protein. In this way, the image's humor becomes sculptural. It is Carl Andre, but edible. It is weight with calorie. And yet the backdrop is not gallery, but suburban roadside. The ad is not affixed to a plinth, but a fast food window. The work's audience is not a curator, but a commuter. In this setting, the display becomes dialogic. It speaks in billboard and billboard alone. It asks nothing. It tells you everything. There is a medieval strangeness in the hue and scale, a kind of alchemical energy where the ordinary shape of steak is distorted into artifact. This is meat with emphasis, protein with posture. The fact that these are called nuggets performs an ontological sleight of hand. It is linguistic compression. A wink. Arby's has not merely released a new item. They have published an image of strange meat logic. It is a text. It is a slab. It is waiting to be read. The fluorescent glow of the subway interior, a temple of customizable consumption, bathes the scene in an artificial daylight, a perpetual noon where choices are endlessly arrayed. The very architecture of the space, with its linear progression from indecision to transaction, echoes the assembly line logic that shaped not only a generation's lunch habits, but its psychic DNA. Here the sandwich was merely the medium. The message was a nascent belief in the sanctity of individual preference, a training ground for a populace increasingly accustomed to bending reality to its will. This subway, like so many others, can be read as a quiet incubator for the now ubiquitous expectation of bespoke experience, a societal shift as profound and pervasive as the scent of baking bread. One might consider the works of artists like Martha Jungwirth, whose paintings, such as Der letzte Tag ist der schlimmste, revel in a kind of controlled chaos, a gestural freedom that finds a strange parallel in the seemingly limitless permutations of a subway order. Or perhaps the rigid, almost devotional presentation of ingredients behind the glass sneeze guard recalls the meticulous arrangements in a work by Atsuko Tanaka, where everyday objects are transformed into charged, iconic components. The customer, advancing along the counter, becomes a curator of their own fleeting masterpiece. each addition of lettuce or sprinkle of oregano a deliberate, albeit ephemeral, aesthetic decision. This cultivated expectation of ultimate control, this daily rehearsal of personal sovereignty over the minutiae of existence, has, arguably, metastasized. The line from, "I'll have extra olives," to the adult temper tantrum in the public square is perhaps not as circuitous as one might imagine. Both stem from a deeply ingrained conviction that the world should and must conform to individual desire. When this conviction meets the unyielding friction of reality, the result can be a spectacular and increasingly socially acceptable implosion. To befriend someone who engages in such public displays of disinhibition becomes an exercise in navigating a minefield of emotional unpredictability, a constant bracing for the next eruption. The social contract frays when the expectation of personalized reality overrides the necessity of shared and sometimes compromised public space. It is not merely a matter of isolated incidents, but a systemic erosion. The endless aisle of Subway's customizable options, a seemingly benign innovation, has perhaps subtly rewired a generation's and subsequent generations' fundamental understanding of its relationship to the world. The expectation of a world that bends to one's will, when consistently unmet, can lead to a fracturing of social cohesion, a societal meltdown where the norms of polite discourse and shared reality are discarded like so much unwanted sandwich crust. The architecture of choice, once a symbol of freedom, now casts a long, disquieting shadow. A hard-edged chapel of drive-through futurism, this Taco Bell exterior reads less like a restaurant than a flattened monument to speculative consumption. The building is all right angles and absence, its facade composed in stucco, industrial siding, and shadowed windows speaks in a dialect of neutralism, a corporate Esperanto where no culture sticks long enough to matter. It is a building that attempts to vanish while standing fully upright. The Bell logo, a stylized glyph of echo and alarm, hovers above the glass doors like a purple exclamation mark. Saturated and skewed, it no longer denotes any real bell, but a visual mnemonic, a vibrating capsule of branded time. The bell doesn't call the faithful to meal, but signals the inevitability of the menu. There's no sound, only symbol. Its pairing with the stark sans serif Taco Bell forms a diptych of flattened command, a non-place made legible through color and font. The structure's ornament is its restraint. Even the landscaping is hedged into obedience. Greenery as punctuation, not flourish. The siding panels are stacked in tight register, their horizontal ribbing evoking both shipping containers and defense architecture. They do not invite touch. They absorb sunlight with bureaucratic indifference. To the right, a single image punctures the rhythm, a hyper-real taco on a magenta field. It floats like a Warholian ghost, both advertisement and placeholder. The colors hum in synthetic saturation, recalling the palette of Tavares Strachan's visual systems, where intensity becomes a kind of message. The taco is not a meal, but an idea of a meal, a hallucination with crisp edges. Even the sidewalk bends to accommodate the building's quiet authority, its incline subtle but assertive. The concrete is scraped and worn, etched with blue lines like veins feeding a giant. The parking lot in front is mottled with tire ghosts and oil stains, its imperfections evidence of endless arrival and departure. There is no permanence here, only repetition. Above, the sky is unedited. It presses down in cloudless volume, turning the Taco Bell into a kind of bunker, a low-slung monolith built not to last but to repeat. The shadow of a pole interrupts the blankness, offering no support, just a vertical interjection. This architecture isn't about shelter, it is about recognition, about instant legibility. It offers no mystery, only access, and yet it holds a certain seduction in its refusal to mean more than it must. It is pure surface, pure signal, a branded monad, a box full of promises waiting to be reheated. Where overhead lights hum and surfaces shine with synthetic clarity, Wetzel's Pretzels offers its most tactile gospel yet. Mozzarella sticks, that is, sticks with a Z. Forget the austerity of modernist restraint or the airbrushed gloss of brand minimalism. This is snack as spectacle, an edible exegesis rendered in wheat and whey. In the promotional image, 2 hands part a stick with tender force. The cheese extends not in a break, but in a filament, tensile, viscous, worshipfully slow. What we are witnessing is not marketing, it is iconography. These sticks, with a name that is itself a vernacular diminuendo, irreverent and proprietary, extend the legacy of devotional form. If Giovanni da Milano gave us Pietà and the frescoes of the Rinuccini Chapel as loci of suffering and grace, Wetzel's channels that effective machinery into a cup of 5 breaded reliquaries. One hand lifts, the other meets it. In the middle, a suspended tether of cheese unites them, a visual analog to the trembling ligature between Mary and the body of Christ. In the Lamentation, circa 1365, Rinuccini Chapel, the drapery falls with the same mournful elongation as the dairy strands seen here. Both are fabrications of gravity and care. This is mozzarella configured as a devotional panel. Each stick, when arranged in its upright yellow cup, evokes Madonna and Child with saints, Uffizi Gallery. Their verticality suggests not just saints in architectural niches, but indulgent chapters of a single edible legend. Even the granular specks of toasted Wetzel's pretzels, pretzel dough, breadcrumb echo the aging fresco's speckled surface, a decay red as authenticity. The cracked golden crust calls up the fractured walls of Santa Croce, and yet what truly sets this image apart, this frieze of mozzarella tension, is its balance between motion and stillness. The viewer knows that the cheese will snap. It must. But in this suspended moment, it resists. Like da Milano's rendering of the Virgin's grief, this is not about climax. It is about delay. Anticipation becomes ritual. The bite is always 1 second away. Wetzel's knows this, of course. The drama is the product. The gesture, the draw, the release. These are the thing. And in their insistence on this ritualized participation, these sticks do not simply offer caloric satisfaction, they require an act of faith. Not divine faith, perhaps, but a devotion to immediacy, to contact, to the oil-slick tactile moment of modern appetite. This is not food to be glanced at, it is food to be torn, tasted, remembered, and for just that instant, with arms extended and cheese straining, it becomes fresco, it becomes psalm. Thank you again for watching the podcast and supporting my work. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone else you think may enjoy it.